Hey everyone, and happy October. Um, I am kind of kicking off my channel here with October astrology, which I find to be very interesting of myself because, for one, Mercury is in retrograde, but for two, the sun right now is in my 12th house because I'm a Scorpio rising. Just a little bit about myself. I've been studying astrology for about 10 years. Probably about 4 or 5 years in earnest now, and I am a voracious student of astrology. I tend towards traditional astrology, but I like to use my own kind of insights uh, and my own psychological kind of bent because despite the fact that I think the ancients did know a lot about what was going on and how to read it and how to understand the synchronicities that exist all around us, I think that they still didn't have access to the level of information that we have now. And so I find it to be really important to have a kind of even keeled approach, not being too dogmatic about astrology, really understanding how we can infuse it into like the kind of modern day experience. So I probably fall somewhere in there. I've studied with Adam Ellenbach, Achyuta Bhavadas, was probably one of the classes that I took, but I also have an insane amount of books on astrology and have a little bit of everything. I studied evolutionary astrology. I studied Demetra George, and I really find myself drawn to Stephen Forrest's work. So there's a lot. There's a lot of different things that I kind of use. And going to school when I was growing up, I studied English and economics, and so I have a little bit of both sides, right? I like the archetypes, and I like the storytelling aspects, but I also like the feeling that there's a universal algorithm that is afoot that's affecting kind of how we experience reality and is connecting all of us. And when we start to see the patterns, we can, as Carl Jung said, we can make the darkness conscious, right? And that gives us the ability to stop experiencing it externally, but and integrate the information and say, oh, okay, here's Saturn once again showing up for me in this lesson. Am I going to repeat the same pattern, or am I going to transform it? And so I like to say that I'm an alchemical astrologer, transformational astrologer with Pluto on the first house. But I just wanted to share a little bit about me in case anybody was wondering, although I know that my video quality is going to get better and my content quality is going to get better, but I needed to start somewhere. And I felt strongly about starting here because I've already kind of cut my teeth on doing monthlies. And I think that the other systems that I study, I also know cards of truth or cardology, something that I have kind of dove into with Ernst Wilhelm's teachings, but then also I followed someone named Diamond, who's a little bit more of a practical person. And then there's human design, which I'm obsessed with as well. And I've studied with my friend. My friend Laura kind of has given me the tools to like study on my own in a way that I wasn't really able to before. So there's all of these different kinds of schools of thought that I use for my, I like to call it astronomical divination. And really it's just to help people ground themselves and like come back to center. And as cliche as that sounds, it's a really important thing, I think, for everyone to be able to do. Otherwise, you're just getting tossed about like a particle of dust in the wind. And I think that there is an inherent seed of potential that's in all of us. And in human design, they call this thing the not self, that's basically the let's say the anti-seed. It's like the stuff that makes it so the seed doesn't want to sprout. And we're indoctrinated by culture and by our friends and by like the community culture, but also the generational culture. And sometimes that's for our benefit and helps the seed grow, and sometimes it's anti, and it makes the seed not grow, makes the seed turn into a shadow of what it could have been. It makes the seed die. There's all kinds of things, you know. So we all have the thing, the kind of inherent potential. But I think astrology helps us unlock it and helps us see clearly how like ours is separate from someone else's, and human design too, because they're all based on the time that you were born. Again, Carl Jung said that, you know, like a wine, we're kind of a product of the time period and the weather and the environment that we were born into. And it's silly to think not, but you know, there's a lot of different types of astrology out there, and a lot that probably aren't as, I guess, integral, or they just don't have the integrity. And so, but they have a large following, or they have like a large, they've pollinated far and wide, and so sometimes we can get bad raps as astrologers, which is unfortunate, because it's in some cases like it kind of, you have to get over that, the judgmental part of it, and like recognize that the culture doesn't accept it, and that's okay, but it's starting to, and like not embody the sense of like weird disdain that the culture seems to have for it, because it's like this like weird pseudo-scientific, spiritual, whatever like place. And then I want to get into just how, what is science anyway, you know, and what has it done for us exactly as a civilization, and how long has it been around, and can we really say that science can ascribe meaning to our existence? And you know, the argument kind of that I would make is that we went very far into God, you know, to a point that we became dogmatic about it, and science came around and said, wait, but we can test these things. And like for a long time we like had this like separate view of like science and God. And so the church didn't like astrology because it was kind of scientific, and now the scientists don't really like astrology because I think it's a little bit like church, right? There's a little bit of a spiritual bent to it. And I think that, you know, this movement that we've all made towards logicism and what I like to call scientific materialism has done a lot for us, but it hasn't given us purpose or meaning. And without that, nothing else really matters to human beings, I think. So anyway, all that to say that I'm going to talk about October's astrology today, and I'll likely have other conversations and other things that I end up talking about along the way. I'll probably create other videos. You know, it's important in this day and age to kind of build out, but I squirm up against any types of labels for myself. So, and any types of commitments, really, generally speaking, because I don't think that you know, I think that a cultural thing that says that we need willpower, like to like get it done and like do the thing. And like right now, this is me and my kind of forcing willpower upon myself, because though I think it's important that I get some information out there, if not for other people, at least for myself and for my own kind of weird little legacy that I'm building in this new age where everything is connected and there's truth out there, but you'd be hard pressed to really find it because it's buried under hundreds and millions and billions of pounds of energetic stuff that other people put out into the ethers as well. So, you know, if you resonate with this, sorry, I have a little bit of shoulder pain. if you resonate with this, great, wonderful. Would love a subscription and or whatever, however this particular platform that you're watching this on works. And if you don't, then that's also fine. And you can move it along. And I don't really need your comments. So, because again, you can dig up whatever truth you want if you want it. So I'm kind of the open-minded type person. The only thing I can't deal with is closed-mindedness. So this is gonna be an open-minded station. I say always take everything that I say with a grain of salt. And I say that primarily because I am not interested in quantum entanglement. So I don't want me to say things so certainly that other people take them to heart and then that's their new truth. Use your own mind, decipher for yourself, see what resonates, see what doesn't. I've been put here with the experiences that I have for a particular reason, I would assume. And so that's where I'm sharing all this stuff from. So that's the caveat that I say everything with a grain of salt. I'm going to talk from hopefully my heart space. So I can't always guarantee everything that I say is 100% correct, but it is what I feel, the truth of what I feel in the moment. And so that much you can kind of guarantee for me. I'm not just going to spew nonsense because I've done plenty of that. And again, purpose, meaning, these are the things that I want. These are the things that I think most people want. So I'm practicing what I preach in one way, shape, or form here. But anyway, onto the astrology of October. Let's share my screen. Sweet. And let me plug in my charger. Los charges. Sorry for the peeps who are watching this, if you're watching it. Okay, Mercury retrograde. All right, so I always like to start, let's see if this is the right, here we go, the Astrology of October 2021. I like to call this again Astro Alchemy with Sarah Burns. Hope everyone likes my Libra scales because that's the sign that we're in right now. So it's going to be relatively short, but sometimes I digress. And, you know, be prepared, I guess, for that. So the first thing I like to do is, this is just an image from Astro Databank or Astro Dienst or Astro.com, whatever comes up in your search engine, of the chart at the moment. And this is actually a few hours ago, but we're actually now, we had a Venus on top of the ascendant in Scorpio. And by the way, full disclosure, I usually use whole signs, but here this is just the Placidus because I just didn't feel like it. Anyways, so what's happening right now? Right now we have 6 planets retrograding. We have Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto, Mercury, Neptune, and Uranus all in retrograde. And, you know, we've had moments like this before in the past, in other years, other times. And the thing that I can say the most about this is a time for looking back and not forward motion, but kind of stand still. What it means too is that all of these planets, technically, when they're retrograde, are closest to the Earth, and so there's a level of, and this goes into my thought process on time, but you know, I don't really feel like time exists exactly the way that we think it does, and so I think that when planets go retrograde, time shows up for us in a different way. especially when there's this number of them. But some words that we can use for Mercury retrograde is just review, revisit, rewatch, redo, anything that starts with re. And it's not just because of the fact that retrograde starts with re, and it's not just the fact that it moves backwards, because I think if we want to be really like good students of astrology, we need to be okay with things not always moving forward. I think that if we want to be good students of life, actually, we have to understand that there's going to be times where things are moving out of clip, and then there's going to be times where things are not, and that they are in a little bit of a different type of situation, as far as kind of the way that we're trying to, I guess, incite change and motion and movement in our lives go. You can't escape from the stars. You can't escape from the planets, no matter what, no matter where you are. The smallest of things and the largest of things will show up. And I think that if we can be those kind of humble observers as what is happening and seeing how we're having and experiencing thoughts, feelings, ideas, all that stuff, we're kind of getting this snippet into the way that the planets are. And so, this goes back to just like the middle path and just being curious and not being too, attached to things. And I think the retrogrades show us that like that's actually more important than we could possibly imagine. And when there's 6 planets doing it, I like to call things sometimes like we're in the upside down. I'm gua shaing my neck. And then Mercury retrograde in particular, this time with Mercury in Libra, is squaring up against Pluto, which is a planet that's associated with the underworld, but it's also associated with the most distant planet that still is orbiting around our sun. And people in the astronomical community may not call Pluto a planet, but having Pluto on my ascendant, I very much know that it is, that it's a real thing. And there's a level of darkness, of kind of this fly in the ointment quality, where there's just something that is, it's like everything has been, like if you're working on a project, you've done all the things that need to be done, all of the checks have been crossed, all of the T's have been crossed, and the I's have been dotted, and the things have been done, and yet there's something that just happens. It rains. Somebody shows up to the venue wasted and pees on the I don't know where I came up with this, but pees on the in the flower bed, ruining it for the event. These types of like weird, out of your control things. I think Pluto's a lot about control, and shows us that first of all, like the tiniest of things could take down millennias of built stuff. A tiny plane could take down an entire building. The butterfly effect. I think it shows us too that like as much as we want to just have some control, right? And this is a very Saturn teaching, it's like there's this karmic thing. If you do this, then this happens. If you do that, then that happens. And this is true, generally, and we should live our lives on some level to that truth, where like, there is a law of cause and effect. But with Pluto, it shows you that no matter how much work you do in planning, there's always gonna be something. And so with Mercury retrograde square this Pluto, there's gonna be, what I've said before, there's gonna be monkey wrenches that are thrown into plans, dark secrets about relationships, dark secrets about maybe lies about relationships, I've already seen some of that play out in my own life. And it's going to again, disclaimer, fully depends on where all the stuff is in your chart. So if you have Mercury retrograde in the third house, it could show up like, in your immediate environment with your siblings. But if you have, it's somewhere else, it may show up a little bit different. It may show up in your work environment. Maybe it shows up in your family environment. Maybe it shows up around your personal romantic relationships. But there is this Pluto 9 aspect to it where, you can't control things. Pluto likes to try and control things. And Pluto also ends up getting very, it shows you where there's been a belief that you can control something that's led to you not being fully vulnerable and authentic, or being fully authentic, period. Forget vulnerability, because sometimes vulnerability isn't authentic, right? It'll show you that. Mars being reborn from its second year, 2-year synodic cycle. So every planet has a specific amount of time that it takes to go all the way around the circle of the sky. And, for example, Saturn takes 28, 29 years. Mars takes 2 years. And so this is Mars return for some people, but more importantly, because Mars takes 2 years, it takes that long for Mars to cross over the sun again. So Mars has basically like this 2-year orbit, but it also meets up with the sun. It may do it more than twice, or more than one time in a given kind of span, depending on its retrogrades and things like that. It's going to pass over the sun no matter what, because the sun moves faster. But Mars is being reborn right now. It's kind of like a new moon where, we have the full moon, which is Mars being fully like fleshed out, and then and that would be opposite the sun, and now Mars is going behind the sun, and it's basically what we call is dying and being reborn in some way, shape, or form. So there may be a lack of energy for things. There may be a sense of Mars stuff not working. Where's my willpower? Where's my sense of control? Where do I try and do my best to make things harmonious? And where do I not realize that harmony can only exist when you surrender, right? So there's going to be these themes of control, letting go, surrender, and again, like in the sign of Libra. So Mars as well is dealing with Libra, which is the sign that it is in its fall, or I guess I would call it its detriment. It's not fully in fall, but Mars is in fall in Cancer. But Mars in detriment, it's in the sign that's opposite of what its natural indications are. So it's like in a sign that it doesn't really like to be in. It's in Venus's sign. And so how do we insert Mars stuff into Venus stuff? Those are going to be, different kinds of symbols that are popping up. And then the new moon in Libra with a lot of Mercury Mars action. So we're going to have a new moon in Libra. Again, this time of the year where Libra has everything to do with balance. And if we're thinking about it from tropical astrology in the Northeast, and the seasons, it's a time of year where Virgo season, right? This is the end of summer. This is the full moon. This is the time of harvest. This is when we gather everything out, all of the different, fruits and veggies and plants that we've been growing, and we remove everything from the soil and from the farm. And then we go into Libra season when it's like, okay, but can I keep this? Should I keep that? How should I decide what's valuable and what's not valuable? And so this is really like a lot too of what Libra does. It's a reason why the scales are highlighted for Libra. because it is this time where we're kind of deciding, is it this, is it that? What's kind of the most important thing to me now? We're letting go, we're releasing, right? The leaves are changing colors. It's kind of like, okay, like if I am going to go dormant for the winter, what things should I take with me that are really important to take? And what things am I capable of leaving behind? And, this is a cliched statement, but like, the only thing that we get when we come out, when we get here is like our skin bodies, but our spirit, and the only thing that we get to leave is the same thing. We take our bodies out, we take our spirit out. There's nothing else. And Libra is starting to ask, okay, like what's important? What are the things that are actually valuable versus the things that really aren't that valuable, that we've been ascribing meaning to, that are, basically just a farce or something that is futile or something that doesn't really get the meaning that we were hoping for. Whoops. So then I make the timeline for October. So October 6th, Pluto's direct. This is when things start getting interesting because, as I said in the beginning, we have everything retrograde, 6 planets retrograde when we start this whole month. And then by the time that we hit October 6th, we're starting to get things to go direct again. And by the end of this month, we're going to have 4 of those planets that we were talking about in the beginning totally direct and out of retrograde. So like the revisiting and the reviewing and all of those kind of hot topic words, the slowing down is going to start to shift, and some things are going to start to come out. When I think about retrogrades, I think about like, okay, like we've moved forward in a way that's unsustainable, or in a way where we haven't allotted or taken into account everything. And so when things are going retrograde, it's like we have to go back and kind of gather the stuff that we forgot in the past, quote unquote. But like, again, time is weird. It's a spiral more than it is a straight line. And so it's kind of like this, like, if we're thinking about the spiral, like we're going back around certain things, right? We're going back over certain things that we thought we were done with, but like truly you're never done with anything. And the seeds of your karma are alive and well, even when you're born. So they're always with you. And so Pluto direct, again, we talked about Pluto a lot when I first started talking, but it's a near and dear planet to my heart, and it has a lot to do with this control, this feeling of needing to control things because something is like, the pea in the bed of the princess who could like tell that there was, a pea. It's like that pea and that princess. And that's the kind of sensitivity that Pluto gives to us, for good or for not good, And then October 6th, we have the new moon in Libra, which we just talked about a little bit. This is when Mars is combust. So Mars right now is in a rough spot, not capable of doing the Mars things that it wants to do, that it likes to do. The action, assertive, direct, willpower type of energy isn't going to be there for Mars, or for any of us really, to tap into. Luckily, Venus has been in Scorpio, which is the same thing, like I was saying with Mars and Libra, it's a sign of its detriment. And so when Venus moves into Sagittarius on the 7th, it's in a Jupiter-ruled sign. It's a little bit better for Venus generally. And so that may add some spice or some fire to the feelings, the warm, the harmonious feelings that Venus likes to dole out. On October 9th, Mars is cazimi the sun. And yeah, this is when Mars is basically having its rebirth. So it'll be an interesting moment. And then we have October 10th, and Mercury is cazimi the sun. So it's 2 days, we have these 2 planets going through their combustion and then their cazimi, which means the exact conjunction. So the Mars and the sun, Mars and Mercury, well, actually, I'm sorry, Mars and the sun, Mercury and the sun are at the exact same degree from our perspective. And so there's this feeling of like a rebirth. And then October 10th, we have Saturn direct, and that is a another kind of big seed change moment where the stuff that we had been going over with Saturn, right? Because we had moved forward at a clip through Aquarius, Saturn in Aquarius, and we had to go back. Some things had been forgotten about, and Saturn is the great, like, kind of teacher of karma. It's the planet more than any other planet. Where Pluto is like, yeah, you don't have any control. Saturn's like, yeah, but the things that you do have control over, you should be taking care of those things. Like, it's just because just because ultimately things are out of our hands doesn't mean that there are certain things that we can't take care of, you know. And that's kind of the difference between like needing everything to be a certain way and having the reverence that Saturn kind of forces upon us if we don't have it for the things that we need, and things that we love. It's like if you don't take care of your car's not going to work. That's a Saturn kind of thing. So Saturn's going direct, and so we're going to start seeing Saturn. I think it's probably it's dependent on you and your chart, as always, if this is a positive thing, like subjectively or not. But I think ultimately, like, we've had to learn some lessons that are a little bit hard, and we've taken time and we've learned them. And whatever the lessons are collectively. And now Saturn gets to go direct. And it's going to say, okay, now we're moving through Aquarius, and we're going to get out, or at least we're going to get pretty far outside of these early degrees of Aquarius. So then we have Jupiter and Mercury direct on the 18th. Interesting, these two planets are opposites. They have opposite significations, and they go direct on the same day. Which there's gonna be some kind of Jupiterian influence on Mercury. What that means about information sharing and gathering, not entirely sure, but Jupiter is in an Aquarius. It went into Pisces for a little bit during the month of, during the summer. And that's when everyone was kind of free floating and not worried about COVID anymore. And then as soon as it went back into Aquarius, it was like, yeah, but the Delta variant exists. And so, this is kind of why I have faith too, because it's like, even if there's like powers that be, right, that like are you like harnessing energy, it's like nobody has any control over the planetary motion. And they're not just like planning the stuff to like F with us, people aren't, like, on some level, they're just as much as we are beholden to the cycles of the planets. They're just as much out of control as we are. They may have more power on some level in certain cases, and they may be making bigger mistakes that have larger karmic weight to them. But ultimately, they can't control which direction Jupiter and Mercury are moving in. You can't control the truth. It's going to come out if it wants to. And if there is a truth, right? And can you control people's thoughts and feelings in order to get them to pay money to you? Of course. But even that has its end, even that has its kind of last place that it can live. And there's just cycles to everything. So then on October 20th, we have our full moon in Aries, which is, going to harken back somehow to whatever is going on with Mars. And Mars is still going to be in Libra at this time. So there's some kind of individual versus relational dynamic, just because of the dynamics of Aries, the fire sign that the sun's exalted in, and Libra, the sign that Saturn's exalted in. So like Aries and Libra are the two places where Saturn and Mars are at odds. But Saturn actually tends to be the one that because it's an opposition, right? This 180-degree situation. I think Mars is going to have to bow to Saturn in this particular full moon in Aries. And the will of the individual is going to be totally swept up by the will of the collective, and the collective karma that we have to pay. On October 23rd, the sun moves into Scorpio, into my first house finally. And on October 30th, Mars moves into Scorpio. So Mars is kind of getting a rebirth, kind of like getting like a stern talking to about what it needs to do, and then it gets to go back into a sign that it rules. Traditionally, in traditional astrology, Mars is the ruler of Scorpio. Okay, so these are the retrogrades and directs. So we have Pluto direct and it went retrograde on April 27th. So I'd invite you to think about anything that was going on during April for you that may come back up when Pluto goes direct on the 6th of October. We're going to have Saturn going direct, which Saturn has been retrograde since May 23rd. So this is a pretty long retrograde. And again, things that happened around May, are they coming back up? Were there things that you felt like were moving forward and then suddenly they started to turn around and move backward? What happened in that case, and what was going on there? Jupiter direct. It'll be direct on the 18th after it's retrograde since June 20th. So it's only been retrograde since June 20th, but this is really like when the start of the Delta situation came. And I don't have these videos on my channel, but I talked a lot about how Jupiter has been very, I feel like, related to the coronavirus and all of that kind of stuff. And then we have Mercury direct, same day on the 18th. And that's only been going retrograde since the 27th, but Mercury, well, we'll talk about this a little bit more on the next stream. And then these are the stories. What are the stories? What are the stories for September? We're just going to scratch that out. What are the stories for October? Can we hide that? So first of all, Jupiter's story. It's direct motion with a combination with the stellium of planets in Libra and its final movement towards Pisces. So Jupiter's going direct, and as it goes direct, it's going to be making a relationship to all of the planets, Mercury, Mars, and the Sun, and the Moon at some points that are all going to be in Libra. So there's this kind of sense of movement, motion forward, and some like a hand, or like a raft being thrown out maybe to Mars, or again, it depends on the situation that you're in personally, but objectively, it's going to look different than subjectively. Always, you need to book a reading if you're interested in like the actual nuances that you're going to experience with this type of thing. Mars' story. So yeah, Jupiter's going retrograde since June 20th. It's going direct. Part of this is just going to be, we're going to start to see things go a little bit less haywire when it comes to coronavirus. Likely other things are going to come down and make our lives more interesting than just worrying about a virus. But good, bad, again, you have to look at some of the stuff with a cold eye, where everything is happening exactly as it should be, even if sometimes it feels subjectively unfair or bad. And then Mars' story. So we talked about this, the death of Mars and its rebirth, and then moving into its home sign of Scorpio. So it's kind of like Mars going through like a come to Jesus moment and being like, I can't believe all of these things that I've done. I can't believe I've been out in the world, out in the streets, when I should have been doing this at home and going back home. And then Saturn and Uranus, which this has been an ongoing 2021 story where they've been doing this square dance with each other. And it's a really incompatible kind of situation. An impossible object meets an immovable force. No matter what, we cannot square the circle on something, and that is happening collectively. It's like Saturn in Aquarius is like, we need to have all of these things be true. We need to take care of other people. We need to do this, but Uranus and Taurus is like, yeah, but you guys have been, for lack of a better word, effing up the climate, the environment, your gut flora, your health for all this time. You can't just sweep it under the rug because you want to take care of people all of a sudden. So, there's the Saturn and Uranus square, and it's, it's been disrupting relationships. It's just a great disruptor. If there's anything that you were in before it started happening in 2021, that ended in 2021 that you haven't been able to end prior to, that's probably due to Saturn and Uranus. And then Mercury retrograde square Pluto, which this is what I had said prior to. This square, what's happening is Mercury was moving direct, and while it was moving direct, it was squaring Pluto. So here goes Mercury. This is Mercury, my right hand, or maybe it looks like left on the screen, but moving, 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 and then it squares Pluto, right? And then it goes a little bit farther forward, and then it turns retrograde. So what does it do? Moving, moving, moving backwards, squaring Pluto again. And then before we're done with it, by the time it goes direct, it's going to go through a third square with Pluto. There's some bristly topic. There's something that's going to come out, information of some sort that's been buried deep below the surface, subterranean type, underworld type information that's going to come out in whatever house that Mercury retrograde and Pluto square is happening in, specifically for people who have like really heavy placements that have to do with those planets. Well, I'm sorry, not those planets. The cardinal signs, so Libra, Capricorn, Aries, and Cancer. But it's going to be also seen and felt, I think, on the collective level. So I would imagine there's going to be information that comes out and comes to the surface that has to do with not just the United States, because the United States is going to go through its Pluto return, but for other reasons as well. So that's all I've got for you for today. Please forgive my very new channel. It's a babe, and it will be better soon, I think, maybe. Not making any promises, but I have a lot of diverse interests and a lot of friends, and I want to start getting stuff out there. But you can find me at Third Eye Kiss on Instagram. Email me, thirdeyekissastrology@gmail.com. Instagram is also where you can book a reading, and then my Facebook is Third Eye Kiss Astrology, which is under construction. It's not fully there yet. The best way to find me is Third Eye Kiss on Instagram. So thanks so much for sticking around. Let me just stop the share. Thanks so much for sticking around if you have. I hope that I was able to enlighten or help someone who's been dealing with something that has to do with transits and wanted to have some answers. And please let me know if any of this stuff resonated and in what way. So sending everyone a lot of love. This is kind of made for me, but hopefully for you too. So take care.